Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today I don't know if I'm going to have time to do any coding on either of the two projects that we've been working on since yesterday. So today we'll just do a quick Q&A session, maybe for the next, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes. So I know it's the middle of the day, so we won't catch a whole bunch of people right now. Most of you are probably working, depending on what time zone you're in. But for anybody that does show up, feel free to ask any questions about programming, web development, learning to code, career advice, stuff like that, and I'll be happy to answer them. Hey, what's going on, Shibam? Ben's got a question. What's up, Ben? What's your question? Give me just 1 second. I'm sharing this stream on Facebook. All right. So going to Ben's question first, I want to start learning React, but I want to master CSS, HTML, and JavaScript first. Do you think it's a good idea? Do I think what's a good idea? Mastering CSS, HTML, and JavaScript first, or learning React? So while I wait for you to answer on that, I mean, I can take a guess as to what you're asking, but I'm going to answer the next question. So Shubham says, do you have any plans for completing Surfshop app and Code Node course? Yeah, not formally, like not with edited lectures like you're used to in the course, but I have been, I started yesterday live streaming, working on it, So you can go back to yesterday and look at the video that says live coding code node or something like that. And you can follow along there, and I'll be continuing where I left off in the course. But as I mentioned, those videos are not going to be edited. There's not going to be in the same format that they were presented in the course, because that stuff just takes an insane amount of time, and because the course is free, I'm not making any money off of it. I can't invest that kind of time in the course. So I will be live streaming working on it as often as possible, but that's about as much as I can do in terms of committing to completing that project. Darkspork, hello. Samaresh, hi. And then Ben followed up, do you think it's a good idea mastering these first? So, you know, it would take you a lifetime to master these things. There's just so much you can do with each one of them. So I would really work on the fundamentals, make sure you understand the fundamentals, and then anything that you need in addition to that, you can just pick up along the way on an as-needed basis. And then you can get started learning React, especially if your goal is to get a job that uses React. Then you're going to want to learn React as quickly as possible. But you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot and not spend enough time learning the fundamentals of the I think Colt calls it like the holy trinity of web development: CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. But basically the underlying technologies and every framework, every stack that's used on the web, you have to know CSS, HTML, and at least a little bit of front-end JavaScript. And then React, of course, you're going to want to know as much JavaScript as possible before going into React. So Lord Fifth's question is, how popular is .NET compared to Node? So I've never used .NET. As I understand it, it's more of a technology that would be used by larger corporations, and I think it's proprietary to Microsoft or Windows. And so how popular? It's definitely pretty popular. It just depends on what niche or industry you're talking about. Node is certainly popular also, but they're kind of two different tools in the toolbox, so I don't know that you would necessarily compare them side by side. That said, Stack Overflow releases like an analysis of the previous year at the end of each year, or for that year at the end of the year. So you can go look at like the most popular languages and see how they stack up against each other. And even though Node.js is technically like a runtime, it's going to fall into, you know, backend JavaScript. So it'll be up there with like Python and PHP, .NET, etc. So I would look for Stack Overflow's, I don't know what they call it, like state of the development or something like that, but it's like their yearly newsletter. Alright, so Samaresh's question is how to start with open source contribution. Basically, one way that you can do it is if you're familiar with Git and GitHub, you can go find a, let's say like a package from NPM. I'll just use NPM as an example because most people that are following this channel are using JavaScript or Node for that matter. You can go find an open source package that needs some work or could be augmented in some way, and then you can make pull requests. So you can fork it, clone it, and then make the changes, and then make the pull requests. That's basically a pull request is your way of saying like, hey, I've augmented your software in some way. Do you want to accept these changes into the actual like core code? And then if they accept those changes, you've successfully contributed to open source. So if that's something that you think would be useful on like a resume or just having that kind of experience, then that's one way that you could get started. You just need to go find the specific package that you want to contribute to. The other thing is you could come up with your own package and put it out there and see if other people start using it. So in that case, you'd ask yourself the question like, what is something that needs to be solved by making it some sort of tool or package, and how can I solve that problem and help other developers by making this open source package and then making it available on like NPM. What's my opinion on Laravel? I like it. It's a lot like Ruby on Rails. PHP plays nice with a lot of these shared, really cheap servers. So if you have a client who's really cheap, it doesn't want to pay for some of the more intensive servers that you would need like a VPS for, then it's a good way to get your foot in the door with a full-on, full-stack project. Yeah, so I've used it on 2 different projects, and those that both those projects are still live. The client's still using them, and they're working good, and they're easy to maintain. So I would recommend Laravel. So engineer's question is, C# is pretty much dominant in Turkey. Do you recommend learning it? What about web development and back-end aspects of it? So I don't use C#, but I don't think you would be losing if you learned it, especially if your goal is to get a programming job in Turkey. Then you're almost forced to learn it at that point. And then PHP, should you learn it in 2020? I just learn technologies on an as-needed basis. So for instance, if you have a job that requires Laravel or requires PHP or requires C#, then you're going to have to learn it, right? There's no other way around it unless you can convince that employer to, or a customer to use something else. So I don't generally, like, for instance, I mentioned that I've got some clients that we have Laravel. I don't know Laravel from start to finish. Like, I used to know Rails really well. I know Express pretty well. I would say I know Express better than Rails. But Laravel, I don't know that well. But did it stop me from using it and learning it? And the same for PHP, which is the underlying technology behind the framework Laravel. I don't know those things super well, but I picked them up on an as-needed basis. I got the project done. Just Googling, getting help from another developer, Stack Overflow, Google, and just trial and error, and then using what I already knew from other languages like Ruby, Python, JavaScript. So to answer your question, if it's something that's needed for you to move forward with your career, then yeah, you're going to want to learn it. Follow up on your Surfshop answer. Can you then update code for the Surfshop app? It's okay if you don't have live coding sessions lectures. Yeah, I mean, so I didn't push any of the code that I did yesterday, but I can continue pushing to that GitHub repository and then just share it with students, and you'll be able to get access to any of the updated code that way. And if you're familiar with Git, then you can use like Git diffs to check and see like what code was added between commits. That way, if you want to skip the lecture or you want to fast forward through the lecture, the live stream that gets recorded, then you'll be able to see the changes that were made using those diffs. So I'll get that source code pushed, and I'll just link it in the description of that each one of those videos. I'll just make sure to link it. What's up, Joseph? Yeah, so after the Web Developer Bootcamp, should I watch the JavaScript course or the Advanced Web course? I bought them all with JS Algorithm. I haven't heard real good things about the Advanced course, but I haven't taken it myself, so take that with a grain of salt. Some people probably like it. I think the main complaint isn't so much the content, although some people did complain about some of the instructor's delivery. It's more so the lack of support in the Q&A. People, in one way, they got kind of spoiled by the Web Developer Bootcamp because we respond to those questions in the Q&A really quickly. We also have a really large community on Discord and Facebook, and you're basically, if you ask a question, you're guaranteed to get help. Not necessarily right that instant, but within the next day or so, you're going to get an answer to your question. Plus, there's such a huge backup of answered questions in the Q&A. If you know how to use it efficiently, then you can find answers to previously asked questions that match the issue that you're currently having. So the advanced course doesn't necessarily, it's younger than the Web Developer Bootcamp, but it's also structured differently, and then it doesn't have the same level of support. So those are a couple differences that some people feel like those are negative differences. It depends on your learning style. If you're really independent and you're able to get past some of those changes, then it might be a good course for you. But to answer your question, what should you follow up the Web Developer Bootcamp with? I would recommend taking my Code with Node course. It's free. I'm not trying to make any money off you. Just check it out on Udemy. It basically, exactly where Colt's course leaves off in the Web Developer Bootcamp, it picks up and it continues with newer syntax and more advanced concepts and just building on everything that you learned previously. Of course, if you're wanting to know specifically out of the courses that you have, it really just depends on what direction you're trying to go. So the modern JavaScript course, I think, is going to give you a better understanding of JavaScript, which is great because then you can use that knowledge moving forward with like picking up front-end frameworks or even getting further into back-end development. The more you know about JavaScript, the better. So that might be a good place to start. Is full stack development more front end or back end? Some of my seniors say that full stack engineers mostly work at the front end. I guess it just depends on the company. If you're just a contractor, freelancer, and you're working by yourself or with one or two other people, then you're going to have to cover all those bases, the front and the back. But if you get into a company as a full stack developer, but they really just mean a front end developer who knows about the back end, which most front-end developers should already know about the back end, but some don't. It really just depends on the position. So if that's what your senior developers are saying, that's probably true for at least the company that you're working in, but I don't think that's a blanket answer for like what every company in the industry is doing. Yeah, no problem. Do I still work with Colt? Yes. So I help manage the Web Developer Bootcamp and the Ultimate MySQL course, both those Q&As, just making sure that one way or another all those questions are taken care of. And then I also deal with the Facebook group, although we have a guy on there that helps out with that. And the Discord, I try to keep tabs on the Discord a little bit, and we have some moderators in there as well. So basically my thing in relation to Colt's courses is just moderating all these different avenues and making sure that students are getting the help they need to get through the courses. So, not sure how to pronounce your name. I'm just going to say KemD. I finished the Web Bootcamp course with no difficulty, struggling with my next move. So similar answer to the question that I answered a moment ago from above. It just depends on what direction you want to go in. Do you want to be a front-end developer, back-end developer? Do you want to be a full-stack developer? That course kind of primed you to be a full-stack developer, but at that point you can really just, it's more of like a get your feet wet course, so you can decide, oh, I actually liked back-end better or front-end better, and then you can branch off and go in either one of those directions. Or if you want to keep down the middle, you can be a full-stack developer and do a little bit of both. Or you may have decided, like, at this point I know enough about web development and programming to appreciate programming, but not so much web development, and so maybe you go in a different direction. Maybe you're doing gaming development or something else. And so at that point, you'd want to look for courses or resources that will help you continue on in that direction. So it's really a question that you have to ask yourself in terms of where you want to go from where you are right now. What are your goals? What kind of company do you want to work for? What kind of position do you want to be in? So you used eval require locus in your fuzzy search feature, and then ESLint complained about eval and said it should be avoided. So you don't want to use eval in your production code, but locus is it's just a tool for debugging, so it's not something you're going to use in production ever. You'll be using it in development, and then you use it and you remove it when you're done using it. So as long as you don't leave it in there, you're good. Also, it's not so much that it's a huge issue with locus in particular. If you look up some of the issues with eval, you'll see some of the different scenarios where it can be dangerous, and it's just the way that it stands for evaluate. It's just the way that it uses the code that's passed into it, and it can be exploited by hackers. So that's something that you want to look into. But in terms of your specific instance with ESLint, it's just telling you there's no substitute for it. You're still, if you use Pride.js or something other than locus, you'd still be using eval. And eval with those tools is just saying, I want to execute this particular package, the whatever function that is required from that module, immediately right here on this line. And then when you're done working with whatever debugging stuff that you're doing, you just want to make sure that you get that line out of there. What's up? What's up, Doc? So Ivan's question about, there's a lot of talk about the frameworks, React, Angular, Vue. Do you think that CSS and jQuery are underrated? You get the impression that a lot of people are neglecting these technologies. So those front-end JavaScript frameworks use CSS, and you might occasionally see somebody mixing jQuery in there, but probably not likely because they do everything that jQuery can do. So jQuery is nice for smaller tasks, but when you get into like overhauling an entire front end and having the website that the user is looking at be completely modular, then you're going to want to use something like React, Angular, or Vue. And so what you're talking about are like kind of two different things. Like if you're using React, Angular, or Vue, then you're probably not using jQuery, but you're definitely using CSS. You can't get rid of CSS, you can't replace it. CSS controls the styling and the look of the web page. And so I don't care what framework you're using, back-end, front-end, or a combination of the two, you're going to have to use CSS. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with a page that basically has a bunch of text on it and maybe some pictures and some hyperlinks. Appreciate that, engineer. We also have Luli, who helps us now from Brazil. So I'd want to give her a shout out as well because she's really good. And then we've had a lot of people pitch in as well. So thank you back to the community because there's a lot of people who are helping out on these courses, and they're doing it for free, which is really nice. So Shubham's asking, how is the interview question for a junior web developer? What sort of questions are asked? And so it just depends on the company, and it depends on the role or the position. So in my experience, it's varied greatly from company to company. So teaching roles are mostly what I've interviewed for, and any like developer stuff I've just done as a freelancer. So my interviews are going to differ from what your typical junior developer role is going to have. But I did, when I was first looking for jobs before I got into like the teaching space. My daughter's awake and she's upset. Hold on. Okay. I'm trying to think. I was asked a question about promises, and I actually got so in this particular job interview, I was asked, like, can you implement a promise? And it was interesting because at the time I used callbacks all the time. I didn't know about promises, so I didn't know how to like implement a promise from scratch. And so I just like wrote an async, I just used like some async code that returned a thenable promise and then just handled it that way. And the guy that was interviewing me was like, yeah, okay. And in his head, he probably was like, all right, this guy is like almost there, but he just doesn't really use those things and doesn't understand them, but he can learn them. But anyway, that's as far as my experience has gone with junior developer roles. Everything else, oh, that's not true. I did another one that was a intermediate / advanced developer interview, and I actually was offered the job, and I turned it down. But it was for an Angular 2, back when Angular 2 first came out, and that was a really strange interview. Let's see what they did. First, they had me do like this like IQ test, but it was like with shapes and stuff. Like I had to like match a bunch of shapes and like make predictions and stuff, and it took me like an hour to do. It was ridiculous. Honestly, that was kind of a red flag about the company. And then they brought the other developers in, and they're like, can you implement a like checksum function in Angular 2? And then I was just like, what are you talking about? So I did it in Angular 1 because I didn't know Angular 2 at the time, and they were just kind of like, it was funny because the way I wrote the code, the person that was interviewing me like turned to the developers and was like, how's that look? And the developers were like, Yeah, I wouldn't write it like that, but it looks good. Like, it's not how I would write it, but it's fine. But the way they were saying it, like, made me think that maybe they, I don't know. That was another red flag where I was just like, are these guys like people I really want to be working with? Because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of structure here, and like, you know, I guess they don't interview very often because it was a small company. So I'm rambling, but the uh, the point I'm trying to make is that interviewing is going to differ from company to company. One thing that's probably true across the board, depending on how the size of the company is, you'll usually have like a first interview where you don't even talk about code, and that's good that you got that interview because it means that they looked at your resume and they said, okay, we're interested in this person. So boom, you have their interest. It's usually a like culture fit where they just want to meet you and find out like, is this somebody that we're comfortable working with, and vice versa. Like, that gives you an opportunity to say like, are these people that I want to continue working with or potentially work with in the future. And then if they think it's kind of a mutual thing, but obviously it's their decision, if they're like, yeah, this person's cool, I could get used to them being in the office every day, then they'll bring you in for a second round, and that's usually the technical interview. And so those can range anywhere from an hour to several hours, sometimes like 4 to 6 plus. But hopefully, and a lot of times they'll do like take home interviews too, where they'll give you a project and just say, have this done by a certain date. And I've actually done a lot of those with students, the take home interviews, helped them with those, and those can vary greatly as well. Again, it's hard to like pinpoint a really concise answer for this because not all junior developer jobs are alike. So positions will vary, and as will the interviews for those positions. But you can expect, hopefully, to have just like a meet and greet type interview, culture fit, and then a technical interview. And then the technical interview can vary greatly. So people often ask me like, hey, how do I prepare for a technical interview? And so obviously you want to make sure you understand the fundamentals, because you can't, you could do FizzBuzz all day, or you could do bubble sort or what have you, but you don't know if those questions are going to get asked. So you can prepare as much as you possibly can by reading these different books about interviews or taking these courses. And I guess this is probably a good time to plug my site. TopRatedTechCourses.com has several algorithm and data structure courses. So the more of that stuff you know, the better prepared you'll be. And that's kind of the key with interviewing, is you want to be better prepared. So one strategy that I give students is find your target companies. Don't pick the ones that you really, really want to work at. Pick ones that you could care less about working at, and here's why. You can go to these different interviews. Hopefully you'll land at least one of them, hopefully more than one, but obviously a few you're going to get rejected from. And go to the ones that you land and experience what it is like to be interviewed, because that in and of itself is a muscle that needs to be flexed. So if you've never interviewed before, you got to get in there and figure out what it's like. Doesn't matter if it's different than the next one that you're going to go to, it's still an interview. So you're still going to get the jitters, and you have to figure out, well, you may not be the type of person that gets the jitters, but most people are. So you have to figure out, am I that kind of person? If I am, how do I deal with that? And then how do I talk to people? How do I present myself? These are all things that you have to figure out, and they don't teach you this stuff when they're teaching you what a variable is, or like, how to code. So this is stuff that you kind of have to teach yourself. There's information about this from these courses, like the ones from Top Rated Tech Courses. There's also free information on YouTube, and there's books, and then of course there's Q&As like this where you can ask people like myself, and we'll help to whatever degree we're able to. And then normally I had a video recently where I recommended the Tech Lead service, because I had read one of his PDFs from one of his webinars, and had some really good resume advice. But then I got a bunch of people telling me like, yo, Tech Lead is like total sham, and pointing me to some videos of some shady stuff that he's been doing. And so I watched him, and I realized that he's kind of a dick. So I'm not going to push you to go towards his resources, because not really into how he's been acting lately. But anyway, circling back to your original question, how is the interview process for a junior developer? And the blanket answer is it's going to vary. So get out there and interview as much as possible so that you can figure out what interviews are like, and trying to figure out the common trends between the interviews that you've gone to. And then you'll realize like, oh wow, these are really different from one another. Like I went to this one and they asked me a question about an algorithm, but then I went to this one, they didn't even ask me to code at all. Like, then you'll be able to understand like interviewing is not simple. It's not something that, oh, this is how you prepare for it, go and ace it like it's a test. That's not how it is. And a lot of it has to do with not just what you know in terms of your programming skill set, but also your personality. And you may get interviewed by like an HR person who knows nothing about programming, and they're just telling that person, just fill this role. Or you may get interviewed by the recruiter, or however that works, if they're hiring out a recruiting agency to pick up developers for them. And the recruiter may not know anything about web development or programming. So it just depends. Each company's different. My recommendation is just get out there and interview as much as possible. All right, so Joseph's question, and Shubham, no problem. Hope you have a great day as well. What are your goals in 2020? Are you learning anything new or working on something fun? So right now I'm spread pretty thin. I had a period of time where I got like really burnt out, and that's back when I was like working on Code Node every single day. And then I stopped coding for, not completely, but I took a pretty good break around the holidays to just like get my head screwed on straight. And now I'm kind of back in the saddle a little bit, but trying to pace myself, which unfortunately is not easy to do when you work from home and you are a contractor and you have a bunch of different avenues of income and you're trying to manage them. So I'm spread pretty thin with projects right now. I'm helping some people for free. I'm helping other people on paid gigs. And then I'm managing all of Colt's courses, though not all of them. He has like 6 now, but like Web Developer Bootcamp and the Ultimate MySQL Bootcamp, and then of course all my free courses, which I think I have like 3 on Udemy and maybe 3 or 4 on DevSprout. So like, yeah, just trying to stay on top of that wave is super hectic. And in terms of learning something new, I had picked up some computer science stuff for a while, and that was pretty intriguing to me. Although computer science can be kind of boring. Like learning something new was interesting and challenging, but then just like the topic itself can be kind of dry and hard to stay on top of. Recently, I've been looking into some stock market stuff, and I'm kind of on the fence about that because to make an income with the stock market, you really truly have to study hard and understand the ins and outs of this stuff, and then yeah, you have to apply like the scientific mathematical side to it. You can't just and then also understand the volatility with the emotional side, and not just like try to get lucky, because if you're just trying to get lucky, you're just gambling and you're going to lose. So kind of get my feet wet with that, but more from an educational standpoint and less from like an actually investing real money. But definitely looking for what to do next in 2020. I think you guys are all looking at something that could potentially be a big thing for me, which is live streaming. I'm enjoying it. It's a good way for me to reach out to the audience and kind of figure out what you all want and then help you, because I mean, stuff like this, if it existed back when I learned how to code, I didn't know about it. I didn't know you could like reach out to someone live with the experience in the area that you're trying to get into and ask them questions. The closest thing I had was I had an email conversation with a developer who made a WordPress theme that I was using, and then there was like forums and stuff and IRC chat, and like if you could find your way into those communities, then you could get answers. But like live answers from a mentor or from someone in a live chat, that wasn't a thing that I was aware of back then. And it was only like 5 or 6 years ago, well maybe 9 years ago, I guess, when I first got into this stuff. Yeah. So to answer your question, Joseph, a lot of stuff going on. Just trying to zero in on what's the most important. Kind of that 4-hour work week mentality where you just like focus on the really, really, really important priorities and kind of let the other stuff go by the wayside. That's kind of where I'm at. But just lots of coding happening, and some of it you guys were seeing in the live coding. Yesterday I did 2 sessions on 2 different projects. Yeah, trying to stay on top of the wave without getting burnt out, which is basically the like perpetual cycle as a work from home developer. Samurai's question is freelancing better than a 9-to-5 job? Also, let's take a quick break, not for an ad, but for a self-promotion. That's my PayPal link. If you guys like and appreciate live streams, please consider supporting me. I'm not getting rich off this stuff by any means, but it definitely motivates me to come back the next day and sit back down and turn the camera on. So if you have $1 to spend, much appreciate any amount. Of course, no obligation or pressure. I appreciate the support. Anybody that shows up and asks questions, it's really great. So thank you for that. All right, so moving forward with the next question. Is freelancing better than a 9-to-5 job? So that's hilarious. I start asking for money and the concurrent viewers just starts going down. Whatever. Is freelancing better than 9-to-5? I would say yes, because you have the freedom to make your own schedule in most cases. But there's this huge stress that's added for like trying to find your clients. So when you go to a job, you have stability. So you're exchanging freedom for stability. Do you go to a job where you know every day I just got to be there by 8 or 9 a.m. and I have to work all day, or at least pretend like I'm working in most cases, and then every single month you know exactly how much money you're getting, and this much money is going to go to your retirement, and this much money is going to go to healthcare, and this much money is going to take care of your base, and hopefully nothing comes up that costs more than that, because then you're screwed unless you have savings. And it's just kind of like working for the man every day until retirement and until you can start taking that pension or whatever it is, or freelancing, contracting, remote work, stuff like that. You have the ability to make your own schedule. You do have to be disciplined, but that's pretty easy when your livelihood is on the line. If you stop working or stop trying to find work, then you're basically going to be homeless. So that's a good motivator. So for me personally, I don't think I would ever go back unless I absolutely had to. So unless I was in a position where I just was making like zero income or just not enough income from working at home and I had to go get a 9-to-5 job, I probably would never go back. But that's just personal situation. Some other people may not agree. A lot of people like the 9-to-5 and they're comfortable that way, and that's totally fine too. Engineer met Lily the other day in the Q&A. She's great. Yes, she is. She's very good, and I'm glad that we brought her on. Okay, so can one start the web development agency after having some experience? Yes. You can do it with no experience if you want to. And there's videos out there. I don't have one. I guess I could make a series, but that's not really a priority right now, so I don't want to make any promises. But there's already videos on YouTube. I think you can look one up that's like how to make a 6-figure or how to make $100,000 a year freelancing web developer company, something like that. I can't remember who made it, but there's somebody out there that made a video like that recently. So I haven't watched it. I just remember seeing the title. So that might be helpful if that's the direction you're trying to go in. What's the average salary of a junior developer in your area? My area right now is North Texas. I mean, we could look real quick and see. Let me pull up OBS real quick. And oh no, there he is. All right, so I don't know where you would go for that kind of thing. I guess salary, web developer, we'll just say Dallas, Texas. The city that I live in is close to Dallas, but it doesn't have near as many jobs. So you'd probably want to, here we go, either Indeed or Glassdoor. All right, so Irving's a pretty popular place. That's where the Cowboy Stadium used to be, and this is where a lot of work is. So here's a UX web developer, which is basically a front-end developer, and it's saying 62 to 67. That's what I would have expected, somewhere in the 60,000 range, but not necessarily for a junior developer job. You might get closer to like high 40s, low 50s for junior. If you can snag a 60-something for junior, then that's good, but something tells me they want a little bit of experience for that kind of job. Here's one. Web designer, developer, $30,000 to $35,000 a year. Get out of here. I know for some people that's a lot of money, but as a developer, that's not enough. Front-end developer, here we go. $80,000 to $100,000 a year. It's a pretty big gap, but basically I guess they're saying if you're at the junior level or intermediate level, you get 80, and then the more you know, up to 100. So you could be as close to a senior level developer and make $100,000 a year, which in this area is decent, especially if you're single. You could live a pretty comfortable cush lifestyle if you're single with that amount of money. So here's an hourly rate, 62 to 70. That's pretty good if you're
working your butt off. Just to get an idea, $50 an hour times 2,000 hours is $100,000 a year. So this is over $100,000 a year. That's if you get what I say, like a 40-hour work week. So yeah, that's the range basically. I would say somewhere between. Here's one remote job, Hotmic.io. What do they do? Oh, and urgently hiring. They need someone immediately. Between 100 and 150,000. Let's just see what this company is all about. Personalities providing alternate commentary paired with social features such as chat and Twitter. Something active and positive communities. So I'm not really sure what they do, but pretty decent if the entry level wage is 100,000, but they probably want a senior level developer for that one. So Amazon Web Services curriculum developer would never work for Amazon. Okay. Hopefully I don't, eat my words in the future, end up getting an Amazon job. All right. So hopefully that answers your question about entry-level developers in my area. Are you a teacher? From Twitter Curtin. Yes, I am. Thanks for answering my question. Yep. How's little Ian? He's doing good. He was napping. If he's still asleep, that's crazy. He's been sleeping forever. But yeah, he's doing great. So Demetrius, the best way to gain experience and create a portfolio is to build projects. So they can be personal projects, or you can go out and offer people projects for free just to gain some experience. Most people they're not gonna say no to something for free. And if you really can't find somebody to accept a free website, then you can always just find a place that needs a website or needs a revamp on an existing website and then build it for them, even if they don't use it. So just projects. That's gonna be the best way to learn, best way to grow your portfolio. WordPress versus Node. That's a good question. What are the limitations of WordPress? I don't use WordPress, but I worry, will there be a job for me? Node PHP developer. So WordPress is, some might consider it a framework, but it's not. It's a CMS, content management system, built on PHP, and it has a lot of drag and drop capabilities. It has a huge open source community, and so it's got tons and tons of free packages and plugins. Some are paid, some have free tiers, paid tiers. But the point being, it can be really powerful, but it's so all over the place that unless you really know PHP and you're building a lot of it from scratch, then you may end up using a lot of these packages that there's no regulation on it. Oh my goodness. There's no regulation, no oversight, I should say, and so a lot of these packages can be exploited by hackers. So you'll see that WordPress websites get hacked frequently. Not all of them, obviously, if they have good security, but it's just a mess in my experience because I've used WordPress and I used it for a long time and I made a lot of money off of it, well, relatively speaking anyway. And I've since moved almost all those people away from WordPress to use something else, whether it's PHP still, but with Laravel, which you asked about earlier, or Node.js with Express, or even just a static website with HTML, CSS, and maybe a little bit of JavaScript. So I'm not a huge proponent of WordPress, but at the same time, if you don't know a lot about web development and you just need to get a website up, then WordPress can be useful. If you, there's people that run their entire business, e-commerce, etc., off of WordPress, and they know very little to nothing about coding, and so they're making a living off, and they don't know how to code, so that's fine. But in terms of which one should you learn as a developer, if you learn PHP, that's great, because then you can use WordPress. You still have to figure out how PHP works with WordPress, but it's not complicated. Or you can use other stuff like Laravel. Whereas if you just learn WordPress and you don't know PHP, then you're kind of in trouble. And then if you learn Node, same thing as learning PHP. Basically your options are endless because you can use all these different frameworks and technologies or just build it from scratch. So I would personally say go with Node or PHP, but don't make WordPress your priority over either of those.
Would knowing lorem ipsum by heart be a good thing to put on my resume? Probably not if you want to get a job. Why DuckDuckGo? Is it better than Google search? I guess you noticed I had that. It's more private. You know, if you're concerned about privacy, which I think everybody should be, then DuckDuckGo, in my opinion, is a better option. I think they use like Yahoo search or something behind the scenes, but they don't use Google as far as I know. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not like I wish I didn't have to use all these different Google products like Chrome. Like I've used Brave browser, but there's a trade-off. Like you get really good products like Gmail and Chrome, but you also give up some of your privacy. So that's just something that you have to decide on. So in an effort to kind of mitigate that, I use DuckDuckGo. In the Web Developer Bootcamp course, we linked EJS files with Node.js. Can you directly connect HTML files to Express, or is there any other way? Yes, you can connect HTML files. Like you can serve static HTML files with Express. Just Google how to do it. Something along the lines of how to serve HTML with Express, and you'll be able to figure it out in a matter of minutes. Yep, engineer. Privacy focused. Yep. So do you recommend using JetBrains, WebStorm, or VS Code for production? I have an educational license for WebStorm. Somehow don't like it. Too many headaches. I don't use either of them. If I had to pick, I'd probably use VS Code just because it's trending so hard right now. And I used VS Code briefly, but didn't really get into it. But I don't want to say I'm like an old dog that you can't teach new tricks to, but I kind of am in some ways. And I've just been using Sublime for so long, and I'm so familiar with it in terms of my workflow that I am just too, let's just face it, I'm too lazy to go learn something else. Now, if I worked for a company or with some other developers that were all using VS Code and that was part of their workflow and they wanted me to use it too, then I wouldn't like hesitate to learn it. It's just not something that I've had to learn, and therefore I haven't learned it. So between those two, WebStorm and VS Code, it's probably like if you were using WebStorm forever and you really liked it, then you probably wouldn't feel the need to go to VS Code unless there was a really compelling reason it had some type of feature that really was better. But right now, VS Code is kind of like taking the competition by storm, I should say. But if I were to use VS Code, I would use VS Codium, C-O-D-I-U-M. It's the open source version that has all the same features as VS Code, except it doesn't have the trackers that Microsoft puts into the program, thus kind of violating your privacy to a degree. I mean, you're letting them do it, so it's not a violation. But if you're interested in privacy, then check out VS Codium. So what do I think about, and by the way, we have like a couple minutes and then I gotta get out of here. So anybody that's still here that wants to make my day, send me a little donation, I'd appreciate it. All right, so what do you think about Freelancer and Upwork? So Freelancer and Upwork, I think I haven't really used them, but I've looked at them and I've seen other people that use them, and I think they're probably pretty congested, and since it's a global thing, I think you're going to be competing with people who are willing to work for way less than you are. So it might be difficult to get in there edgewise unless you just do really, really good work and people are willing to pay you a premium for that. So I wouldn't like try to compete with everybody else by being the cheapest while still producing quality work. I would try to be the person that does amazing work and charges a premium for it, and then you're just singling out that 1% of people that are willing to pay for that kind of thing. So that would be the approach I would take if I were to try and find work with those websites. Sorry, that was probably pretty loud in the microphone. Can you give some ideas about backend projects for portfolio without much front end? I hate CSS Bootstrap. So you don't have to like front end stuff, like design stuff, CSS and Bootstrap, but it's worth understanding them to a degree because they're going to make your life a lot easier. Even if you're just a
back-end developer, you're gonna have to have a website that looks nice. So either you need to figure out how to use that stuff, or you need to make a relationship with somebody that can do that kind of thing for you. So what I do personally is I just use pre-made themes, so I don't have to think about it. I know CSS, and that's the ticker. You have to know CSS because kicker. Anyway, if you're going to pick up a Bootstrap theme and then you're going to customize it, you still have to know CSS to be able to make those customizations. Otherwise, you're kind of locked in with whatever the exact look of the theme is, which is not necessarily what you're going to want. So yeah, I would work on your back end stuff, but then to make it look nice on the front end so that the employer is not just like, huh? You're going to want to pick up some pre-made themes. You can find them for free, or you can get some nicer ones for like $10. Okay. Started with Sublime thanks to Colt, and then switched to VS Code. It's really a gem. Yeah, so the more I hear about it, the more I'm like, oh, I should give it another chance. And I even saw someone the other day that was working in Atom and just had it all set up like an IDE. They had their terminal down at the bottom and their file system on the left and their code editor in the top right. And it looked really nice. And I was just commenting on, like, I like being able to like control exactly what's on the screen at any time. So I can have like my code editor and not worry about the terminal, and then just do a quick command tab or alt tab on PC to switch over to the terminal and over to the browser. But some people prefer to have the terminal down there in the bottom so they can see what they're doing at all times. And then also these IDEs give you the ability to toggle it so it can go down and up. So I don't really have great reasons for not using it, and I'll admit that. But I just haven't taken the time to like learn it, use it, like it, and I'm sure if I did use it, I probably would like it quite a bit. So, which operating system do you prefer? And thank you for the previous answers. No problem. Thanks for the questions. So, which operating system do you prefer? I use Mac for programming. I used to use Linux before that, and it was really nice. If you're on a budget and or you want to get the most bang for your buck, you want to get a computer that's really fast, but because if you could spend $2,000 on a Mac, but if you were to spend $2,000 on a PC, you're going to have an insanely good computer, way faster than a Mac. So, but then you have the problem of you don't have Macintosh operating system unless you build what they call like a Hackintosh, something like that. And I tried to do that one time and it got really tricky, so I just ended up putting Windows on that machine. And it's like a super fast machine. It ended up being like a gaming computer. But anyway, long story short, I use Mac for programming, Linux just to mess around on and have fun with, but also for programming, and then Windows for gaming, and that's about it, just gaming and just everyday use. Like my kids or wife are using the computer, they'll use Windows. So I have the full spectrum. I don't have any of the new versions of Windows. I do some tech support for people, mostly family at this point, because when I was younger, that used to be my main gig. But like I'll help people remotely with their computers, and almost everybody's using Windows 8 or Windows 10, mostly Windows 10. And so I've become familiar with it, but I've never had it. I still use Windows 7, and now it's like deprecated or whatever, so there's no support for it. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, I'm on a Mac right now. All right. Where do you find your pre-made themes? Here's one place. Lord Fifth. Bootstrap Made is one. Get Bootstrap has some themes. And then there's Wrap Bootstrap and Start Bootstrap. So let me just get those for you real quick. So there's another one. And here's another one. And then if you go to Get Bootstrap and then go to Themes, it's themes.getbootstrap. So let me just plug that real quick. Yep. So there you go. There's some Bootstrap theme finding places. That's if you want to use Bootstrap. You could pick, Foundation or any of those other frameworks. I'm just familiar with Bootstrap, so that's what I use. What exactly are Vim and Emacs, and which one does Sublime use? So that's probably a question for Google. I forget what the acronym is for Vim or VI, but basically they're editors that you can use from the terminal. And so like just like you use the terminal to navigate, you would also use it you would open up Vim, so like VI, and now you're inside of Vim. And from in here, you have to understand all the commands. And what's funny is some people, like, once they're in it, they can't get out. But you can see it tells you :Q to quit, and then you're back out. But anyway, they're just two different flavors of, or two different softwares that you can use for coding all in one place. And if you can learn how to do it all at once and inside your terminal, like the creation of the files, the editing of the files, then and you're able to be fast with it, then you don't have to go to all these different places. You don't have to use your mouse at all. You can do everything from the keyboard. So you can become a really efficient developer that way. As far as what Sublime uses, I think you could use either of them with Sublime if you wanted to, but Sublime itself is its own program. Next live stream date, Samrush. I've been streaming pretty much every day since I started streaming, so I'll probably take a break, just to avoid burnout, maybe on like Saturday or Sunday. But you can expect, hopefully, if things go well, and if people donate their money, which again, I'll plug that just for the hell of it. Got to keep asking. If people keep making donations and I keep having the energy to do it, and we're all, it's a mutually beneficial thing, then they'll be almost daily, maybe 5 days a week, something like that. So you can expect one within the next day or two. I lost where I was. Okay. VS Code has so much extensions you won't need to use anything else. MongoDB client, Postman replacement, etc. Ron, thank you. Good information. Yeah, so that's nice. That's kind of like what we talked about with VI, is like, if you can do everything all in one place, then why spread it out? So right now, the way my workflow is, I have a terminal, I have a code editor, I have a browser, and I'm just like bing, bong, boom, all over the place. And the terminal is where I do the Mongo stuff as well. But if you can do it all in one place, a lot of people prefer that. So that's good to know. You're welcome, engineer. Thank you for sticking around. So which text editor do you personally use? I use Sublime Text. Sublime Text. Let's see here. Thanks, you're welcome. Turkey. Chickens. Poland. Sweet. So we got people from all over the world. That's really awesome. Mobile first displays, adaptive CSS depending on screen size. Do you write your own CSS, or what CSS framework can you recommend for this? So I use Bootstrap almost exclusively because I'm not a design guy. The more you know about CSS, the easier that stuff is going to be. And then of course now CSS is becoming so powerful with things like CSS Grid and Flexbox and everything else that CSS3 has to offer. So some people don't even use frameworks anymore because they kind of have them built in. But me, I'm still a Bootstrap guy. Bootstrap does what I need, and I'm able to make stuff for my clients, make it look nice, and make money. So that is what I use. Joshua, do I have a streaming schedule? In case you missed it a second ago, I don't. I just doing it as often as possible, usually kind of in the middle of the day, which I know isn't convenient for everybody. So of course I have the recorded streams up later. But if you want to get involved with the Q&A and actually ask some questions and have them answered, then you'll want to get there live. I also try to do some in the evenings because I know we got people on the other side of the world, people that are getting off work that are trying to attend. So I just kind of switch it up here and there. It's not predictable. If that's better for everybody, then maybe I can try to commit to that, but not real good with that kind of commitment. I don't want to like make a promise and then not be able to stand up to it. So I'll consider that moving forward, but right now I would say just count on it being intermittent. It's going to be random throughout the day. Yes, no problem, Dan, no problem, Samrush. And sorry, I can't read. It looks like Sanskrit. But whatever your name is, should I start applying for jobs after the Web Dev Boot Camp? Yes, you can. Are you going to land a job? Maybe. I have some stories of students who took the course and then completed it and very quickly, soon thereafter, were able to land a job of some sort, whether it was full-time, part-time, contract, etc. But they weren't necessarily just taking Colt's course. They were doing free code camp, they were doing hackathons, they were doing YouTube and other stuff. It's Arabic. Awesome. um, yeah. So should you start applying? I would say applying sooner than later is good, because the more experience you get with applying for and doing interviews is going to help you in the long run. But set your expectations such that you understand that early on you're probably not going to land your job, because you're just getting your foot in the door. You still don't know what you don't know, and you still need to figure out the whole interviewing thing, which in and of itself is a whole nother skill set. So the sooner you start working on that stuff, the better. But don't expect like, oh, I'm going to start tomorrow, so I'm going to have a job next week, because you would be letting yourself down. Just give yourself some realistic goals. Like, I'm going to have a job in the next 3 to 6 months, and then work really hard to that effect. Will Flexbox and CSS Grid be added to the Web Dev Bootcamp? So Flexbox, I think, is covered a little bit in the Bootstrap 4 section, but I could be wrong. But as far as them being added as their own sections, I don't think so. That's something that you'd want to look up on your own. Plenty of free resources out there, and then also paid resources that you can look into. But if I were to have to like go pick one of them up right now, what I would do is just go to the documentation, build whatever little example projects they have, or just build my own little project and just get familiar with them. At midnight here in Turkey, it was just about to close the lid of my computer and saw a live stream notification. Totally worth it. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you made it. Enjoy the rest of your night, because I'm actually about to shut things off. I've got a tutoring session happening in like 20 minutes, and so I gotta get to that. And I need to like eat something before that starts. All right. Thank you everyone for hanging out with me. If you want to support me before you go, 2 different ways you can do that. You can buy Udemy courses per my recommendation on topratedtechcourses.com. You can just donate money to me directly. It doesn't matter if it's $1 or $1 million. I'll take whatever it is. And then if you want, the last thing, if you want tutoring, one-on-one work with me, then check out this link. I think that's the right one. Let me check it. Yeah, so if you've never tutored with me before, I would highly recommend it. Of course, obviously I would. But I think most everyone that's ever done tutoring with me, which at this point is quite a few students, I've never had like a single negative review. If they didn't like it, they didn't tell me to my face. So anyway, if you have questions that you need answered like in volume and you want them answered in a one-on-one chat, or you have a project you need help with, then check out my tutoring services. Otherwise, a couple other ways to support me above, or if you just want to hang out for free, that's cool too. Just appreciate you being here nonetheless. All the views and the likes and the shares and everything are really helpful, subscriptions, etc. So thank you to everyone that's here supporting me in any which way that you're able to. As far as Gorm taking forever to load, I don't know. You'd want to contact them. Their email, last I checked, is contact@gorm.io, and you want to ask them what's going on there. Might be them, might be you, just depends. My recommendation would be, if you're having trouble with it, then you need to set up your local development environment. So the sooner you set up your local developer environment, the better off you'll be, because working locally is so much faster than anything. I don't care if it's AWS or Gorm, etc. Local environment is king. So get that as soon as possible. I'm going to butcher your name, but Wojtek, Malone. The link that I shared above, I'll share it one more time for you. topratedtechcourses.com has, just click on the front end filter or category, and it'll pull up all the React courses, and then you can see which ones are the highest rated. And you know, it's Udemy, so just wait for a sale. If you can get it for under 12 bucks or 13 bucks, then just grab a couple of them. Maybe try each one for like a day or two or a week, and then the ones you don't like, return for all your money back within 30 days of purchase, and then zero in on that 1 or 2 courses that are the ones that you like the most, and that'll help you learn React. So Colt has a course, but there's several other people competing with him that have really great courses also. And then, of course, there's always the documentation if you don't want to spend any money. That's the way that I would go about it. But yeah, check out topratedtechcourses.com. You might find some other stuff on there that you like while you're at it. That's it for today. Thanks, everybody. I got to get out of here. We'll catch you all on the next live stream. Later.